Most men lose attraction not because they did something wrong, but because they never did the things she secretly needed. Ever wondered why chemistry fades even when you're doing everything right? There are 6 behaviors women crave at a nervous system level, but will never ask for directly. Miss them, and you're forgettable. Understand them, and the dynamic flips. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll know exactly what shifts desire without a single conversation. Desire is pre-verbal and rarely spoken directly. Most people believe desire is something you talk about, negotiate, or clarify. That belief alone is why so many connections lose their charge. Attraction doesn't begin in language, it begins in the body, in the nervous system, in split-second sensations that register long before a thought forms. By the time words appear, desire has already either awakened or shut down. That's why listening only to what is said keeps you permanently late to the truth. Watch what happens when a woman is genuinely drawn in. Her tone changes, her movements slow or sharpen. She lingers, then pulls away. None of that is accidental, and none of it is conscious strategy. It's the body responding to stimulus it doesn't need to explain. Language comes later, often as a cover story, not because she's dishonest, but because the real signal never lived in words to begin with. Here's the part most men miss. When you ask her to explain what she wants, you're asking her to translate a sensation into logic. That translation strips it of power. Desire doesn't survive being interrogated. The moment it has to justify itself, it collapses into preference, comfort, or politeness. That's why communication fixes logistics, but rarely revives chemistry. Women learn early that wanting too much is dangerous. Being direct can be misread, judged, or used against them, so desire goes underground. It starts speaking through pauses, eye contact, tension, tests, and silence. If you can't read that language, you'll keep responding to the surface while missing the current underneath. You'll hear reassurance when she's actually asking for presence. You'll hear words when she's watching how you move. This is where attraction is either maintained or lost. Men who stay locked in logic try to solve desire like a problem. They ask more questions, they explain themselves, they seek clarity. And with every attempt to make things understood, the polarity drains away. Desire isn't built through understanding, it's built through resonance. Notice how the most intense moments are often the quiet ones. A look held a second too long, a decision made without discussion, a shift in energy that doesn't ask for permission. Those moments bypass language entirely and go straight to the nervous system. That's where attraction lives. When you learn to trust that level, everything changes. You stop chasing verbal confirmation and start paying attention to behavior. You stop reacting to words and start responding to what's actually happening. You become present enough to feel the difference between hesitation and invitation, between resistance and testing. And when you respond accurately, without over-explaining, desire deepens instead of retreating. The paradox is this: the more you try to talk desire into existence, the more it slips away. But when you move, decide, and hold yourself with quiet certainty, something ancient wakes up. No discussion required, no clarification needed. That's because desire was never waiting for the right words. It was waiting for someone who could hear what was never said.
2. Attraction thrives on tension, uncertainty, and polarity. Attraction dies the moment everything becomes predictable. The instant she knows exactly where she stands, exactly how you feel, exactly what you'll do next, something subtle shuts down inside her. Not because she stopped liking you, but because desire doesn't live in certainty. It lives in the space between knowing and not knowing, in the tension that keeps the nervous system awake and alert. Think about the beginning, when everything felt electric. You weren't sure how she felt yet. You didn't know when you'd see her next. Every message carried weight. Every silence created anticipation. That wasn't anxiety, it was polarity. 2 people moving toward each other without collapsing into sameness. That edge is what activates attraction. Remove it and you remove the charge. Comfort feels good, but it doesn't create desire. Comfort soothes, desire stimulates. They operate on entirely different circuits. When you rush to reassure, to explain, to make everything safe and obvious, you're calming the very system that needs to stay slightly activated. Her body doesn't respond to logic or fairness. It responds to contrast, to rhythm, to push and pull. Too much closeness too fast doesn't deepen attraction, it flattens it. Uncertainty is often misunderstood. This isn't about being inconsistent or emotionally unavailable. Chaos repels, but controlled unpredictability draws people in. It's the sense that you are grounded but not fully accessible, that you choose her but you don't cling, that you enjoy her presence but your world doesn't stop when she leaves the room. That balance keeps polarity alive. Polarity exists when there is direction, when one person is slightly ahead, moving towards something, and the other feels pulled into that movement. When both people are constantly checking, negotiating, and mirroring each other, polarity collapses. Attraction needs asymmetry, someone leading, someone responding. When that dynamic disappears, intimacy turns into companionship, and companionship alone doesn't sustain desire. Mystery isn't secrecy, it's restraint. It's not explaining every thought a moment it appears. It's not filling every silence. It's allowing her imagination to participate. When you leave space, her mind moves towards you. When you overshare, overtext, and overexplain, there's nothing left for her to lean into. Desire needs room to stretch. Tension is created when you don't rush the outcome, when you enjoy the moment without trying to lock it down. When you're present, engaged, and then willing to step away while the energy is still high. That's what leaves an imprint, not the long conversations that fade into exhaustion, but the moments that end with more left unsaid. Most men are taught to eliminate tension, to make things clear, to secure certainty as quickly as possible. And in doing so, they unknowingly remove the very ingredient that made her feel alive around them. Attraction isn't built by proving safety alone. It's built by combining safety with edge, familiarity with distance, presence with autonomy. When you understand this, you stop chasing reactions. You stop trying to manage how she feels. You allow tension to exist without rushing to dissolve it. And paradoxically, that's when she moves closer, because desire doesn't grow in what's fully given. It grows in what's felt but not yet possessed. Leadership is felt, not announced. The fastest way to kill attraction is trying to explain that you're in charge. The moment leadership has to be announced, justified, or negotiated, it's already gone. Real leadership is something she feels in her body before she ever understands it with her mind. It shows up in the pause before you speak, in the way you move without hesitation, in the certainty that doesn't need permission to exist. When leadership is real, it doesn't create tension in the room, it removes it.
Most men confuse leadership with control. They think it means being louder, more assertive, more forceful. But that kind of energy doesn't lead. It pressures, and pressure creates resistance. What actually creates attraction is the opposite, grounded decisiveness. The man who knows where he's going and moves there calmly invites her to relax. Not because she's weak, but because she's tired of carrying everything. All day she makes decisions, manages expectations, navigates social currents. When she's with you, her nervous system is asking one question: can I finally let go? That question is never asked out loud. It's answered through your behavior. Do you hesitate? Do you over-explain? Do you check in every few seconds to make sure you're not doing something wrong? Every unnecessary question tells her she has to stay alert, stay in control, stay responsible. And when she's in control, desire shuts down. Leadership, when done right, gives her permission to stop managing and start feeling. There's a subtle power in making decisions without turning them into discussions, choosing where you're going, taking her hand and guiding her through a crowded space, ending the night when the energy is still high instead of stretching it thin. None of this is aggressive. It's clean, it's calm, and it signals something deeper, You trust yourself. That self-trust is what she's responding to, not the specific action itself. Here's where most men get it wrong. They wait for confirmation before they act. They look for verbal approval, reassurance, a green light at every step. But attraction doesn't respond to checklists. It responds to attunement. The ability to read the room, to sense when to move forward and when to slow down, comes from presence. And presence can't be faked. Either you're there or you're in your head trying not to mess up. When leadership is embodied, she doesn't feel dominated. She feels safe. Safe enough to soften, safe enough to stop performing, safe enough to want more without having to explain why. And that's the paradox most men miss. Taking the lead doesn't take something away from her, it gives something back. Relief. Relief from decision fatigue. Relief from having to guide, correct, or reassure you. Relief from being the strong one for once. The moment you stop trying to prove you're leading and simply move with certainty, the dynamic shifts. She follows without thinking about it, not because you demanded it, but because something in her recognizes the signal. Leadership isn't announced, it's transmitted. And once you understand that, you stop asking how to lead and start becoming someone worth following. She's not trying to fight you. That's the part most men get wrong, and it's why they fail the moment pressure shows up. What looks like conflict on the surface is rarely about the words being exchanged. It's about what happens to you internally when tension enters the room. The real question being asked isn't "will you agree with me?" It's "do you disappear when things get uncomfortable?" The moment she challenges you, withdraws slightly, or says something sharp, your nervous system is being evaluated. Not consciously, instinctively. She's feeling for stability. She wants to know whether your sense of self collapses the second there's friction. Most men respond by apologizing too fast, over-explaining, or scrambling to smooth things over. They think they're being loving. What they're actually communicating is fragility. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you abandon yourself to keep the peace, she stops feeling safe with you. Not because she wants domination, but because someone who can't hold his ground with her won't be able to hold it anywhere else. Emotional safety doesn't come from agreement. It comes from consistency, from knowing that when emotions rise, you remain intact. Watch what happens in those moments. She might question your decision, poke at your confidence, or shift the frame of the conversation. This isn't random. It's a stress test. She's seeing whether you react or respond. Reaction is fast, defensive, emotional. Response is slow, grounded, unshaken. The man who reacts gets pulled into her emotional weather. The man who responds becomes the ire of the storm. And no, this doesn't mean you become cold or dismissive. That's another mistake. Indifference isn't strength. Presence is. You stay engaged, you listen, you acknowledge, but you don't fold. You don't rush to fix her feelings. You don't sacrifice your position just to restore harmony. Harmony that requires self-erasure is not harmony at all.
When you stay calm under pressure, something subtle shifts. Her nervous system relaxes, even if she doesn't show it immediately, because now she knows there's a floor beneath the emotion. There's something solid holding the space. That solidity is deeply attractive, not because she wants conflict, but because it signals reliability. It tells her that when life gets chaotic, you won't vanish. This is why chasing, over-texting, or seeking reassurance after tension backfires. You think you're repairing the connection. What you're actually doing is proving that the tension controls you. And the moment she feels that, respect erodes, not as a punishment, as a natural biological response. The men who succeed here don't try to win arguments. They don't try to dominate conversations. They don't try to prove anything. They simply remain who they were before the tension appeared. Same tone, same posture, same grounded presence. They don't need her approval to feel steady. And here's the part no one tells you. When you pass these tests, she doesn't reward you with praise. She rewards you with trust, desire, and a deeper emotional investment. You'll see it in the way she softens later, in how she leans in how the dynamic shifts without a single word being exchanged. She was never asking you to fight her. She was asking whether you could stand. 5. Purpose must come before relationship. The fastest way to lose attraction is to make another person the center of your life. The moment your days start orbiting around her schedule, her moods, her availability, something invisible but critical collapses. Not because she wants less attention, but because she never wanted to be your purpose in the first place. She wanted to step into a life that was already moving somewhere. A man without direction doesn't feel loving, he feels heavy. When you drop everything to be available, when your goals bend the second she calls, the message underneath is clear. There is nothing pulling you forward. And when nothing is pulling you forward, there is nothing she can move toward. Desire needs momentum. It needs the sense that you are going somewhere with or without anyone's permission. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men never hear. When you prioritize her over your mission, you don't make her feel valued, you make her responsible. Responsible for your happiness, responsible for your emotional stability, responsible for giving your life meaning. That weight is suffocating, and no amount of affection can compensate for it. Attraction collapses under responsibility. What actually pulls her closer is seeing that your life has structure, pressure, and direction that exist independent of her presence. When you say you can't see her tonight because you're building something, finishing something, or committing to something that matters, it doesn't push her away, it creates contrast. It signals that your attention is earned, not guaranteed, and earned attention carries weight. This is where most men get it backwards. They think desire grows through constant availability, endless reassurance, and prioritizing the relationship above all else. But desire doesn't grow in still water. It grows when there's current. When you are engaged with a challenge that sharpens you, disciplines you, and demands something from you, you show up differently. Your energy changes. Your presence becomes grounded instead of needy, focused instead of reactive. She doesn't want to be chased by a man who is standing still. She wants to be invited into motion, into a world that has rhythm, standards, and forward pull. When you have a mission, you stop asking for validation. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop bending yourself to maintain closeness. And paradoxically, that's when closeness deepens. Watch what happens when your purpose comes first. Conversations become lighter because you're not trying to extract reassurance. Time together feels charged because it's not unlimited. She starts leaning in, not because you demanded it, but because your life signals value without saying a word. This isn't about neglect, it's about hierarchy. When your purpose leads, the relationship finds its natural place. When the relationship leads, everything else shrinks, and so do you. And no one desires a man who has made himself small to be chosen. A man on a path doesn't ask to be wanted. He's too busy becoming someone worth wanting. And that difference changes everything.
Scarcity and separation create lasting impact. The moment you stay too long is the moment the energy begins to die. Most men don't realize this because they're chasing connection, not understanding impact. They think more time means more attraction, when in reality, attraction grows in the space left behind. What lingers in her mind is never how long you stayed, but how you made her feel right before you left. Think about the experiences that stay with you the longest. They don't fade because they ended early. They fade because they overstayed their welcome. Desire works the same way. It sharpens when something is just out of reach, when there's room to wonder, when the interaction ends on a high note instead of slowly bleeding into comfort. Comfort is safe, but safety alone has never created longing. Most men linger because they're afraid that if they leave, the moment will be lost. The truth is the opposite. Leaving while the energy is alive preserves it. It creates an unfinished loop in her nervous system. Her mind keeps replaying the interaction, filling in the absence with imagination. That's where attraction deepens, not in constant availability, but in controlled withdrawal. This applies far beyond dates, conversations, intimacy, even conflict. When you pull back first, you communicate something without saying a word. You have a life that continues moving forward. You're not clinging to the moment because you don't need it to validate you. That subtle signal is powerful. It flips the dynamic from you seeking to her investing, from you wondering where you stand to her wondering when she'll see you again.
Men often mistake scarcity for manipulation. It's not. Scarcity is a byproduct of value. You don't create it by playing games. You create it by genuinely having somewhere else to be, something that matters enough to pull you away. When you end the interaction calmly, confidently, without apology or explanation, you leave behind certainty, not doubt. Certainty that the connection was real. Certainty that you chose to leave, not that you were pushed away. There's a psychological reason this works. The mind remembers experiences by their emotional peak and their ending. If you allow things to drag until the energy fades, that's what gets remembered. If you leave at the peak, that's what stays anchored. She doesn't remember the silence that followed. She remembers the intensity that came before it. The man who always stays available becomes background noise, predictable, easy to place, easy to forget. But the man who knows when to step away becomes a reference point. He stands out because he doesn't drain the moment dry. He respects the power of timing. He understands that absence is not rejection, it's amplification. This is why chasing never works. The more you pursue, the more you flatten the emotional landscape. But when you withdraw with intention, attraction has room to breathe. She feels it in the pause, in the delay, in the unanswered space where desire grows louder instead of quieter. The paradox is simple. The less you try to extract from the moment, the more the moment gives back. When you're willing to walk away while it still feels good, you're not losing anything, you're planting something. And what grows in that space is far stronger than anything you could have forced by staying. Everything you've heard comes down to one uncomfortable truth most men avoid. Attraction is not built by trying harder, explaining more, or staying longer. It's built by understanding how desire actually responds. Desire doesn't reward neediness, it responds to presence, timing, and self-respect. The moment you stop trying to secure the outcome and start embodying certainty, the entire dynamic shifts without a single conversation. What separates men who are chosen from men who are tolerated is not effort, but awareness. Awareness of when to lean in and when to step back. Awareness of when to speak and when silence carries more weight. Awareness that wanting something too openly often pushes it away, while allowing space invites it closer. This isn't about being cold or distant, it's about being grounded enough to not cling. The men who win at attraction are not chasing validation, they're moving toward their own life with such clarity that others feel compelled to follow. When you live from that place, you don't need strategies or lines. Your behavior does the work for you. And the most powerful part is this: the moment you stop trying to be chosen is the moment you become unforgettable.